You love baking but hate when you overdo it with sugar? Then tune into this week's episode of Joyful Eating, where I share my insanely easy two-step magic trick for baking without ending up regretting your choices. I know it seems too good to be true, but this technique is unbelievably simple and effective. It still amazes me every time I use it. So, welcome to Joyful Eating, episode 200. Amazing. So, this week we're talking about my magic trick for baking without bellyache. But before we get to that, the best bite I had on the weekend, my Irishman has been playing around with his peri peri chicken recipe, perfecting his peri peri chicken marinade. So, we had a team effort. I brined the chicken and then he marinated it and then he roasted it in the wood fired oven. And we had it with his green goddess salad, so like just a green salad from the garden with an avocado, herb, lime kind of dressing. So good. Like, yeah, just like that perfect combo of like smoky roast chicken, bit of heat, not too much heat, peri peri sauce to go with. Like, yeah, it was a business. I'm a very lucky person oh yeah, we're a lucky team. Okay, so a plan for today is first I'm going to share the story behind my baking with without bellyache discovery. And then I'm going to share with you my this two-step magic trick for being a naturally healthy baker. And it really, like, seriously, it still blows my mind that this is possible for me. And then I'm going to share with you like three common baking mistakes that people make and how to avoid them, and three baking mistakes I used to make and how I avoid them now, and also just like a tiny step to get started applying this idea to your life. So the story behind this episode is basically every time I bake, I still marvel at the fact that I can, like, so on the weekend I was baking a lemon tart and making pastry, like a sweet pastry, and so yeah, like I was able to do that without tasting any of the pastry, with only like having a small taste of the lemon curd filling, and then sat down when it was dinner time that night, like had my slice of tart with some mascarpone, enjoyed it thoroughly, and that was it. Like, it was just, no regrets, no overeating, no belly aches, no like picking on no eating the raw pastry mixture. Like, and like just every time I do that, like when I bake and I just am able to do that, it still blows my mind. And anyway, someone who's in the current group of the Naturally Healthy Club, she lives in New Zealand, and she had shared in the group this week that because she's like, has a troubled history with sugar, shall we say. And she was like, wow. And she's like made this dessert and to take to a friend's place. She's like, and it included caramel. And she was like, she made it. She didn't taste any of it. She took it to her friend's place. She had had a beautiful slice, like serve, really enjoyed it. And that was it. Like, no overeating, no like regrets, no of that awful stuff that tends to go along when we eat sugar. So it's like, yeah, okay, definitely time to do an episode specifically around baking. But it applies to, all sweet cookie. You don't have to necessarily be baking something. It could apply to a set cheesecake as well. So that's the story why. And so what is this two-step magic trick that turns sugar lovers into like being able to be intentional around sugar and to find this balance where you get to enjoy sweet treats, include them in your life, but you're not having too much of them. So it ends up not being a problem for your waistline. So, what is this two-step magic trick? Okay, so first step is before you start baking, you, like you, the trick is to actually set an intention about how you want it to go before you start thinking through, okay, do I want to be eating raw pastry dough, or which if you do, amazing, like you might decide that that's what you want. Great, then you can do that. But do you want to be eating so much raw pastry dough that you make yourself feel sick afterwards? Probably not. Although maybe that is possible. But by deciding, like setting an intention before you start baking, this is like, it's such a weird magic trick that when we do that, it's like it switches off, like it makes that firm decision in our brain, and then it just turns off all that desire to pick and to do all those behaviors that aren't great around sugar. And it just comes down to making a decision. So setting that intention before you start. Am I going to be tasting some of the lemon curd filling, or do I want to just wait and to be able to have it at dinner time? Or, and there's no right or wrong with this. Like sometimes I do set the intention that, oh, actually, I do want to taste, like with my lemon curd, I did want to taste the lemon curd when it was still warm and, before I used it in, but I didn't want to like be eating spoonfuls of it. Just like, a couple of teaspoons was enough. But I thoroughly enjoyed those when I had them. So it's like deciding it, like not trying to be on your best behavior, but just being realistic of like, okay, how do I want this to go? What do I want to happen when I'm doing this? And then, so that's the first step, is just to set that intention. And that intention setting, it's mad how effective it is, right? And it takes a couple of seconds to pause before you start baking, and, and it makes all the difference. But then the second step is occasionally there will be, like, sometimes you set the intention, it doesn't even cross your mind to eat or taste or do anything. But sometimes there will be that urge of like, oh, there's more lemon curd here that didn't fit in the tart. Maybe I could have some now. And so when those little urges come up, the second step is to coach yourself, like to be ready for them. Like, of course I'm going to want to eat this pastry dough. Of course I'm going to have the urge to lick a bowl here, or to do whatever. And just when it comes up, like, coach yourself. So be compassionate. Go, of course this is happening. Of course this is going to happen. And then just remind yourself that, hang on, that I set this intention for a reason, and this is why, I don't want to feel gross later. And just coach yourself in that moment to remind yourself of why you don't want to overeat the whatever it is that you're having the urge to eat. And when you reconnect with that reason why, then you'll be like, oh yeah, that's right, cool, and you'll be able to move on. So that's it. 2 steps. That's it. And if I was going to make it one step, it would just be the first one, like decide, setting in those intentions ahead of time or setting the intention before you start. But yeah, those two, like setting the intention and then coaching yourself if and or when you do have urges, is a game changer. Seriously, those two things are enough to, like, my client who had the massive sweet tooth and was able to make something with caramel, like no dramas. And so many of my clients have done this, and it's like they just go, I can't believe who I am. Like, it's so weird. And the great thing is, because baking is so fun, hey, like baking and making sweet treats, and they taste so good when they're homemade. And so, like, but when we can do this, when we can find that balance of like setting intentions, not overdoing it, not leading to bellyache, then we get this best of both worlds. And it's such a good place to be. But of course, there are some mistakes that I have definitely made in the past, and that you maybe making. And first is, like the first is like believing your story, like that you can't be trusted. So we all have stories about ourselves, and thoughts about ourselves. And so you may have a checkered past with sugar, which I certainly did, and I think probably most people do. So if we keep believing that story, that I can't be trusted around sugar, and if that keeps running on autopilot in the back of our mind, then of course what happens is that perpetuates it. So when we're around sugar, we overdo it. So we first way to solve that mistake is to just be open to the possibility. So rather than I can't be trusted, maybe I could. What if I could? Maybe it's possible for me to be create a different relationship with sugar, and just start working on that belief then, that I could do this differently. So that's first mistake. And then the second mistake is expecting it to be perfect. So, and then of course, so what happens is, like, we think we should be perfect around sugar. And then when we don't, we set an intention, say, and then we don't stick to it, or we forget to set an intention, then we just think, oh, I'll throw it, let's go into the all or nothing of like, oh, well, I've blown it, so I might as well just finish off whatever. And so what we want to do, rather than being this black and white, all or nothing, aiming for perfection, is to expect it to be messy, expect it to get it wrong sometimes. And I certainly do. um, and then what we want to, and then, so then what we can do is that in those moments where we notice ourselves, oh yeah, hang on, I am eating this raw, pastry dough, and hang on, I don't really want to be doing this. And then rather than just keeping going, we can pause and choose again in that moment to, oh, actually, no, that's probably enough. I don't need to, and you can stop. Or if it's the end and it's too late and you're already in bellyache territory, then again, like you can choose again, like you can choose the story that you make, what you make it mean. So this, you could make it mean, I can't be trusted with sugar. I'm never going to be able to do this, blah, 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 which isn't very helpful. And that just keeps you stuck in that, in that struggle. Or you could go, okay, that didn't work out quite how I wanted to, but I don't have to do this perfectly. It's okay. I can just try again next time. And so when you aren't expecting to do it perfectly, and it doesn't become such a big deal when you do mess up, when you do go past your intentions, it's just like, oh, okay, maybe think about what I want to do differently next time. Is there a lesson I can learn here? But then you move on. And then next time you're baking, you go, okay, I'm going to start again, setting my intentions. And that, like, letting go of perfection is so empowering, but it enables you to build on this skill and to work on this habit and to get better at it. So that's two mistakes. And so believing the story that you can't be trusted, expecting perfection. And then another one is just like the time of day that we're choosing to bake. And one thing I really notice for me is if it's late in the day and if I'm a bit stressed about, like, I'm trying to get something done, or just I'm worried about it turning out well, like if I'm baking something and I want to get it right, then the more stress I have around when I'm baking, the more less likely I am to stick to my intentions. So the way to avoid that mistake is just to set yourself up for success. So allow, when you are baking, allow plenty of time and choose. I like, for me, if I try and do something after dinner or late in the afternoon, if I'm trying to bake then, and I'm not, like, even without time pressure, like I just notice that my ability to coach myself and my willpower is less. So I'm less likely to stick to my intentions. Whereas if I do it, in the earlier in the day, then that means I'm way more likely to stick to my intentions. So just being, like, setting yourself up for success and being strategic with your timing, I think is a really important factor, with particularly for baking, particularly with something a highly addictive substance like sugar. But yeah, just know that this is possible for you, and that you can avoid these mistakes, and that this magic trick can work for you. And then how do we apply this idea to your life? Is basically, I want you just to think now about, like, what have you got coming up in the next week? Like, is there going to be any opportunities for you to bake? And actually, you don't have to apply this. This doesn't only apply to baking. It can apply to any interactions with sugar. So maybe you might be going out for dinner with friends, and this restaurant that is going to have amazing desserts. You can apply the same principle of deciding, like, setting that intention before you go, of, oh yeah, I'm going to choose whatever dessert that sounds the best to me, and I'm going to eat it slowly, and I'm going to savor it and enjoy it without guilt. Like, you can set those intentions for when any interaction that you're having with sugar. So yeah, just think about what's coming up for you this week, and then, like, think about, like, when would be the best time for you to set that intention. So it might be just before you go out to the restaurant, or it might be when when you walk into the kitchen to open the fridge to get the ingredients out to start baking. Like, that might be when you set your intention. But the more specific you are with the timing of when you're going to do it, the more likely you are to do it. But yeah, so that's how you get started. It's just deciding when you're going to set your intention, setting your intention, and then coaching yourself. So have a fantastic week. Have fun, interacting with sugar wherever you are. And yeah, I will look forward to catching you next week. Okay, bye.